Okay, we're live.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Oswego County Industrial Development Agency meeting of January 25th, 2023. And before we begin our meeting, I'm going to have Kevin Lamontagne introduce the staff and guests that are present here. And then I'm going to have Recording Secretary Len Schick do a roll call to verify we have a quorum.
Great, thanks, Gary. I'll start with our guests on the phone today. Joining us from RIC Energy, we have two folks, Peter McAuliffe and Nancy Vallejos, and they represent three of the items on our agenda today, the developer behind those projects. Then the staff present is Oswego, the Chief Executive Officer of the agency. I'm Kevin Lamontagne. I serve as CFO of the agency, and Kevin Caracoli, our General Counsel. With that, I'll turn it over to Len.
Okay, roll call. Gary Toth.
Present?
Tim Stahl.
Here.
Barry Trumbull.
Present.
Tricia Peter Clark.
Present.
Nick Finale.
Here.
And Mark Redfield is running late.
Okay, very good. So we have a quorum. All right, so let's begin our meeting. First item on the agenda is the minutes of December 21st, 2022, and they were on our portal. Everybody get a chance to review them? We're very lengthy, so
I'll make a motion to approve, Tricia.
okay. Motion by Tricia Peter Clark, seconded by Barry Trimble to approve the minutes as written. Any additions, errors, or corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the notice of the meeting was in the Palladium Times on January 10th, 2023. The Treasury's report, right now we don't have a Treasury's report to date. So next on our agenda is we're gonna go to Valley Solar PV LLC and discuss and eventually discuss the initial resolution.
Sure, thanks, Gary. So I'd like to some degree cover numbers 4 and 5, Volney PV and Volney 2 PV together. And Peter, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of the project. I know some of the pertinent details our board will want to hear, and then I'd like to turn it over to you to give you and Nancy to give an update maybe on both projects kind of together as far as where they are in the process, your expected timeline, situation with any open items with the property owner or town approvals, and then we'll open it up to questions and discussion. So I'll start. So Volney PV and Volney 2 PV, both LLCs, are obviously by the name located in the town of Volney. This is just outside the city of Fulton. If you're following down 481 Cayuga Community College is up on the hill, then there's railroad tracks. It's just on the south side of those railroad tracks on the east side of 481. Maple Avenue kind of comes in behind there, and the address of the entrance will be on Maple Avenue. Back behind where Raleigh is and Teddy Bakery and some other things, and then kind of back along that property. They're two, to some degree, we could call them twin projects, but of course there's some differences. They're both 5 megawatts. Volney PV is a 34.6 acre solar farm. Volney 2 PV is 29.7 acres. What the property owner and the developer are working toward is merging 3 parcels and then subsequently subdividing it into 2. It's a total of 107.3 acres approximately, and the resulting parcels for Volney PV will be about 60 and Volney 2 PV about 48. And as in the past, our pilot would only apply to the area basically fenced in for the solar farm based on the site plan and the property description in the lease.
So they're leasing the property.
Yes, and Peter, could you confirm that? To the best of my knowledge, standing here, I believe you're leasing the property from the landowner, from the trust that owns the land.
Yes, that's correct. We currently have an option to lease the 2 projects.
Which is typical at this stage. They'd have an option and then execute it basically when they're ready to pull the trigger.
Yep.
So they've applied for. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, one thing I should mention, the Volney 2 PV project is actually a 4.85 megawatt AC.
Oh, thank you for that correction.
Likely downsized by the utility, by National Grid. So I think Volney PV.
Very good to know that. Thank you. And I'll tell the board here that they're familiar with our pilot deviation policy, and they've applied under that policy. So the rate in year 1 would be $5,000 per megawatt at either the 5 or the 4.85, as Peter just corrected me, and the 20-year pilot was a 2% escalator. So the standard solar package. So Peter, Nancy, I'll turn it over to you two to provide any other updates you could on the kind of real-time status of the projects.
Yeah, so, the quick overview, and again, Kevin, as you touched on, they are side by side. So it's a few different parcels that's in the process of being combined and then split into two. We had gone through, seeker, as well as this required a small area variance. And then obviously, site plan and special use permit with the town of Boldy. Those were all received, all the approvals as well as the seeker negative declaration in October. So right now, this included, but also just, dotting all the i's, crossing the t's for some other items before moving to construction, which is likely to occur starting in probably mid-summer or so of this year is what we're anticipating. So, happy to answer any specific questions, but that's what we are with the two projects.
Does anybody from the board have any questions? For either,
Have we done anything with
Yes,
this
Nancy?
group before?
We have,
Yes.
yes, Barry, we've approved two projects, Mexico PV and Williamstown PV. We had started to look at the one that's on the agenda today, Oswego PV, we'll cover that next, so we have worked with this developer and their team before.
Just have a question as well. Has the project gone to the town yet and received local approvals for that would be required for a project such as this?
Yes, both projects have.
Okay.
They received all the approvals and then the seeker negative declaration as well.
Any other questions or folks from RIC, anything else you'd like to share?
Peter, Nancy, just one question. Are the other two projects, underway, Williamstown and Mexico, as far as, construction?
Not yet. They're obviously more advanced than these, but, again, still tying down some final items. Anticipated, I would say, towards, instead of midsummer like these two, I would say maybe late spring, early summer for both Mexico and Williamstown.
Okay,
And
anybody?
I've been dealing with Kevin, I'll keep him apprised of anticipated closing dates and check in, as that progresses further towards when we're looking to close.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board for either Peter or Nancy?
We have two separate initial resolutions to approve today. The initial resolution basically defines it as an eligible project and authorizes us to schedule a public hearing and notify the taxing authorities and such, so.
Okay, can I get a motion on, Valley PV LLC?
I like that motion.
Okay, on the initial resolution, okay. Motion by Tim Stahl,
I'll second.
seconded by Len Schick. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Alright,
Opposed? Carried. Okay, now number 5 is Valley 2 PV LLC, the initial resolution.
I'll move that one.
Okay, motion by Nick Canale, seconded by
I'll second.
Tricia Peter Clark. Any other discussion or comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, so Tricia, Peter and Nancy, thank you very much.
They're staying on for us.
Oh, they're with us
Next
also?
time, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I could also similarly give an overview of that. The one thing I wanna start with is the board had considered approving an initial resolution for Oswego PV back at the meeting I missed, November meeting? October it was, the one, I had COVID. And we deferred taking any action on the initial resolution until all kind of relevant or critical town approvals were in place. And I'll ask Kevin and also the company to give a little update on that. But first, a little overview of the project. This is down in town of Oswego, more or less where County Route 20 and County Route 7 intersect. There's a town of Oswego municipal garage there, which is on County Route 7, and then the land is sort of between that and County Route 20. It's right there in the corner. the southwest corner of that intersection essentially. It's a 3 megawatt project, 22.44 acre solar park on a 78.31 acre leased site, leased from the local homeowner. So similarly, they've applied under the standard pilot program that we have, and everything would apply there as on the other two projects. So I guess that as far as my understanding is secret has been approved, the negative declaration has been reached, and the site plan and special permit will be considered at the February 20th meeting in the town, right?
Yeah, this is Kevin Caracoli for the benefit of Peter and Nancy. And again, wearing a different hat, I represent the town of Oswego and was actually involved with the planning board and zoning board in this approval process. It's ongoing, but it is sufficiently moved along where I am comfortable recommending consideration of this initial resolution. The application required both the use variance and a special permit and site plan. Two different boards, but the use variance was granted actually earlier this week by the zoning board of appeals, and as Kevin pointed out, the planning board will review the special permit and site plan, probably finalize it at their February 20th meeting. There was a fair amount of controversy and public interest initially with this project. As many as, 40 or so, between 40 and 50 folks showed up, mostly the neighbors around, although there were some folks, for the first time in a long time that I could recall, people showed up in favor of the project, town residents in favor of renewable energy, and said, what's the big fuss all about, right? So it was an interesting set of meetings, but I can verify, and this has been going on since at least August. After that initial meeting, last meeting on Monday, exactly one resident showed up and voiced no concern one way or the other. Ultimately, and we'll find this, there's more background and information for you, but solar projects in New York State are considered public utilities, and when that is the case, state law, case law determines that the restrictions on public utilities are much less stringent than if anybody's trying to go through to get a use variance. It's actually quite a high hurdle to clear. But with public utilities, it's much less stringent. And so ultimately, once the residents realized that this was the case, I think most of their opposition went away, and the planning board is just going to be dealing with visual impacts, making sure there's enough screening for the residents. This is a heavily wooded area, and so based on the visual impact analysis that this company has done, very little, there should be very little visual impact on these solar panels to the residents. They're fairly far enough away. The project is set into the land, and there's pretty good acreage that should provide a good screen for the neighbors.
So that was their main problem?
That was the main problem, yeah. Some of it was just kind of, I would characterize as, internet research, conspiracy theories about solar panels and what happens, do they leach toxins into the ground and things of that nature. I will say that the company took this very seriously. They brought in as many as half a dozen people during some of these meetings to explain exactly the process. We got right down into the composition of the solar panels themselves. It was, I will say, and I've looked at probably at least a dozen or more of these applications in the last couple of years. RIC Energy has put together the most complete set of documents I've seen to date from any solar company that I've dealt with. So very comprehensive, made the review process easier because everything was documented. They got letters from every state agency that has some hand in this, from SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, the DEC, NYSERDA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They went through and looked at the wetlands. There are wetlands on this property, but they are not going to be significantly impacted. The environmental review went off and a negative declaration was determined, and that was after several hours of review by the planning and zoning board. Everybody took this very seriously, and I think that the project is better as a result of it. So,
I have two questions from the legislator who oversees that, unfortunately couldn't be at that meeting, the most recent one. But she asked me to just raise two questions. It sounds like they've been addressed, but if you wouldn't mind, I just want to ask them. The first was there's some concern that was raised about cutting a large amount of trees out there, a number of acres of trees.
Yeah.
I think this is outside my world, this is a question for them, but was the idea of potential effects to water runoff or some other concerns. I'm assuming if DEC reviewed it and there was a negative deck, everything's good, but was that addressed and communicated?
yeah, very much so. That was probably that and impact on transportation, because if anybody is familiar with that particular stretch of County Route 20 and 7, when you come down 20 towards 7, there's a big dip, and then you come back up right on Cemetery Road and that area. Well, one of the entrances, actually Niagara Mohawk has a utility access entrance off of 20, which is right on that hill. And the original, well, not the original, but that will be used by National Grid periodically to check on poles and things that they need to do. The main entrance for construction and routine maintenance going forward is actually going to be through the town of Oswego's highway department land that Kevin mentioned earlier. That's off of 7. It's a much less impactful entrance. Does require the town to grant an easement to the company, and that's in the works right now in terms of what the fair consideration would be. But yeah, Tim, to your point, that was those two issues were probably looked at the most. And again, Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Army Corps of Engineers, DEC, all weighed in on it. And this is not in a flood hazard area. There was some concern, clear cutting so much acreage, and there is a fair amount. There's a good 20 acres of land that will be clear cut in terms of trees to put the site, the solar panels on. We looked at off-site impacts as well, and received feedback from the DEC that there really is no concern in that regard, and that the design elements that the company has offered will mitigate any of those potential impacts.
Great, and actually the second question had to do with the access, and you've answered that as well. So it sounds like, from my point of view, sounds like many of those questions were answered. And obviously we still have to do a public hearing, right? And there's still some other public opportunities here as well. So.
Yeah, the IDA will have to do a public hearing, and there's at least one more public meeting with the planning board to review the site plan and special permit conditions, many of which will be what Volney imposed in terms of decommissioning plan, making sure that that's renewed periodically. And I've seen this as a trend recently. These projects have a life of anywhere from 20 to 30 years, and a decommissioning bond and the time value of money today versus 30 years from now. No one has a crystal ball, but when you look back, you look at what $1 was worth in 1980 compared to now, things go up. So what communities have been doing is imposing conditions to review the decommissioning bond every 5 to 7 years or so, to determine if it's keeping up with inflation, so to speak. And so Volney's imposed that. The town of Oswego will also impose a condition like that. The other issue is just the visual impact and the screening, making sure that there's sufficient trees and coverage that, you know, none of the neighbors wanna look out their window and see these panels. And so if every, you know, company and the town is mindful of that, then project design should cover all of those issues.
And we would obviously, not finalize this until we've heard from the town on their final from the planning board
We can.
as well, so.
Yeah, it'll be, I'm projecting that that's going to be February 20th, but, you know, that's just, that's a educated guess, unless something comes up substantially between now and then, but I've been asked by my municipal client to start preparing conditions and terms for approval.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, so at this point, all we're doing is the initial resolution determining the project's eligibility for IDA benefits, which would then also trigger us to schedule a public hearing. So we're not taking any final action on the project at this point.
Sounds good.
Peter and Nancy, is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion we just had?
Only thing, and Kevin, I appreciate the overview. I know you're very familiar with the details of this project. So this is a slightly smaller project. This is 3 megawatts AC compared to the other two. So I think that's the only thing of note that Jeff did comment on.
He did, he commented on 3 megawatts. I wrote it down.
And Peter, remind me, what was the total acreage and how many acres for the site?
So it's a little over 22. It's 22.44 as far as the total limit of disturbance, as we like to call it, which includes everything that's within the fence, all the panels, transformers, the access road that goes to transformer location, and then the access road, both running, small one running north to County 20, and then the poles, and then the small access road that runs up the town road to the south.
And I guess I may be making an assumption here that the town would be looking to do what we've done on other projects where the acreage of the project is a small percentage of the total acreage of the parcel, where there's some sort of a courtesy split for the remainder to make sure that that's paying its fair share of taxes.
Yeah, I've talked to the assessor and he's familiar with it. There's one other project, solar project that actually the agency approved a couple of years ago, different company, in the town of Oswego. So yeah, that'll be a courtesy split. I think, Gary, to answer your question, and Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the total acreage is in excess of 70 acres.
78.3.
78, okay, so 22 plus will be affected. So the balance of it will be taxable. And actually, it's an important point because the balance of that property is not just vacant land. There's a substantial home on it that already generates a fair amount of taxes for the town.
Are they gonna own the property or lease it?
This is a lease as well.
This is all lease?
Correct.
Okay, anybody else on the board have any questions regarding this project? Okay, I guess I'll entertain a motion on Oswego PV LLC
I'll
and
make
the
a
initial resolution. Motion by Tim Stahl, seconded by
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
Seconded by Tricia?
Yep.
Seconded by Tricia Peter Clark. Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Okay.
Peter and Nancy, we're done approving the initial resolutions for all 3 projects, so if you'd like to drop off the call, you're welcome to do so. Thank you.
Okay, I really appreciate everyone's time this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good one. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, number 7 on our agenda, the IDA notice for procedures update, a review. I guess, Kevin, you're gonna do this?
Sure. So late last year, there were a series of amendments to IDA projects that affect the notice requirements that agencies must undertake now to provide adequate notice to the public to the affected tax jurisdictions. The good news is that we're already doing virtually all of this. The only new twist is that in addition to the school district that is an affected tax jurisdiction, the law now requires that the actual school board receives notice, not just the superintendent. And so that's something that will be implemented going forward. Now it's in effect. These are the first initial projects that this law is affected by. So this will comply with those notice requirements.
When you send it, is it to the president of the school board, or
Well-
does each board member get a?
So practically speaking, and this has been reviewed not only by me but by folks at Barclay Damon, the practical suggestion is to send it to the clerk of the Board of Education and for distribution to the current members, because those members change, their websites aren't always updated to reflect who the members are. So you're covered if you do it that way. You
Just
don't have to name the individual
Just
board
to the
members. Clerk for distribution to the current members. Yeah, that's how we'll probably end up doing it.
Technically, it goes back to the superintendent anyways. I'm just
get it.
telling you
No,
from
I know.
experience. I was clerk in Fulton for several years, so,
Some school districts do have, their boards have separate mailing, like mailboxes, PO boxes and things. We've looked it up, all the
it
districts.
was just a question, it's all based on.
Internally, and internally, the staff has kind of looked through this and just to determine how this is gonna change our internal procedures. It's not gonna change a lot. I mean, it will add a little bit more. There will be more sort of certified mailings that are gonna be going out of our office, but we're pretty comfortable with what we need to do.
It's like $100 a project.
Yeah,
Cost,
pretty much.
it adds up.
It's
The
it's
added
something
cost.
that, we'll probably have to potentially look at, increasing, a nominal increase to our app fee or something like that to cover some of these, because it will add some cost to each project that we're not being incurred for. But, the only other thing, and this is something we were already we had already kind of created this report, but, the other thing is now, starting in February, the IDA has to send notice to the taxing authorities 2 years before a pilot expires, that the pilot will, sort of a reminder, hey, the pilot will be expiring 2 years from now, so let's have a plan to make sure this is getting back on the tax rolls appropriately. Before that wasn't a requirement, so it required IDAs to create an aging pilot report. We already do that, we already have that. So we'll just be able to utilize that to reach out to those taxing authorities now and make sure we're all kind of, especially for these older pilots that are 20 years and taxing authorities, elected officials, or superintendents or stuff may have changed 4 or 5, 6 times since this thing was actually made. So they aren't aware of what's going on with it. So
And we've been providing notice, but somewhat informally now, again, it's certified mail and it's 2 years in advance and, yeah.
And there's nothing in the law or any other law that necessarily prohibits a project from qualifying for another pilot. This is the obligation to notify the taxing jurisdictions that this current pilot's expiring. From our experience, some projects will request an extension or a new pilot as long as they qualify, and there is some benefit to doing that. I mean, the nuclear power plants have been on continuous pilots for the last 20 years, right? So there's some benefit to doing that. But there's nothing in the law currently that prohibits that practice. The last one is really kind of more of a, now it's a minor point, but it is the law. It doesn't take effect until February, but it puts the onus on a property owner or a project that is receiving a pilot benefit to notify the agency and the taxing jurisdictions if they're choosing to challenge the assessment. Our agreements always allow the assessment to be challenged. You're not locking in and forever giving up your right to challenge your assessment. And many of both our non-manufacturing and manufacturing UTEPs are traditionally tied to the assessment, right? So you get an abatement off of the assessed value, and that changes from year to year. If it's too high, you have the right to challenge it. So now the agency must be given 45 days notice prior to any challenge to an assessment. This is to give us that heads up, as well as the taxing jurisdictions. We never participate in a challenge, but it would be, it's just more of a notice provision for our benefit going forward.
And it does impact stuff because say if an assessment is challenged and say 2 years later that it's finally approved, that could be retroactive to pilot payments that have been made on a previous assessment. So there may be requirements then to provide credits or for past payments and things like that. So it does impact an IDA, so it is good for us to know when those are happening, so we're aware that there may be some sort of a credit or a situation where they've overpaid for several years.
That's the bottom line is we're doing most of this now. Just the law is now caught up to our practice.
And this was a request from members on this board, and it was approved. This is not required, but we also, for these sort of public hearings and deviations and stuff, we also CC the sitting legislator in that district. That's not required by IDA law. It's only required to go to the chief elected official at the county, but that was something that we do going above and beyond to make sure that they're aware of things happening in their district. So.
And if I could, that's been very much appreciated, so thank you.
Plus, it's also been, to give him some credit, he's been personally reaching out as well to town supervisors and county elections.
Okay, any questions on the, our policy, the update? We don't have to take any action on this, do we?
No, it's just more of an FYI.
Okay.
Just want to be transparent, let you guys know that when we have to update our procedures, you're aware of it as well.
Also, we had a lot of pilots, awardees challenge. Here's I was gonna say,
It's very rare.
seems like it.
Very rare, and in the times that it has happened, we've sort of been aware that it was going to happen just because we knew the project wasn't happy about what their assessed value was, but now they have to notify us. It's very rare though.
And if it's a fixed or some type of a deviation with a fixed payment that escalates maybe over time, I mean, for all practical purposes, the assessed value is almost irrelevant because the company knows what they're going to be paying. They don't always pay attention to what the local assessor is doing with the property increase, or right. But at some point, it catches up to to the property owner or the town.
And I'll tell you that the certified mail return receipt is definitely beneficial, because I know we've had a few instances where municipalities said they weren't notified of some of the things we've done, and to the credit of the staff, I had to go to one meeting and I had all the return receipts there and just showed it to them, and of course they looked at it and just kind of quieted down, and I said,
It doesn't look like my signature.
yeah. And it's one of those things where the person received the mail, probably signed for it, and didn't pass it along to the person who needed to see it, so, but it's beneficial. Okay, any other discussion on the, our procedure, the updated procedure for notification? Okay, next, number 8, the industrial park expansion.
Okay, so I just want to give an update. We had discussed in a previous meeting that we were going to, when Fast New York was announced by the state, this was a program specifically created to get funding for shovel readiness, engineering studies, and actual brick and mortar infrastructure and other related costs to development of industrial parks and strategic sites. We said that the expansion of the industrial park in Phoenix fit perfectly. We had already done a majority of the engineering work, and want to give you guys, sort of a pat on the back for taking that proactive step over the last several years to doing that, because it put us in a real leg up position over some of the other sites around New York State that are sort of scrambling now to try to be able to take advantage of it. So we have there is sort of a 2-step approval application process. We had already submitted our project for what's called the pre-application, and we submitted it for what's called Track C, which Track C is the sort of the brick and mortar infrastructure money portion of it. There's a Track A, which is sort of the shovel to market your property as shovel ready. Track B is to get engineering money to do the work that we've already done, and Track C is the one that that's where the big money is, and that's where we're already at that level. So we, like I said, we have that leg up to make sure that we can get this in before the funding is gone. I guess the people who are sort of in that engineering phase they have that risk of, are they going to be able to pull this off before the funding's gone? So what we have done to date, and I had gotten this back in late December. We are now working with CNS to update any of the engineering stuff we need to related to the justification for request for funds. But we submitted our project. We submitted it as a $15 million project with a request from Fast New York for $10 million. And so where that comes from is our initial EDA grant request that we put in was specifically for public infrastructure, water, sewer, and roads. This allows you to also apply for private infrastructure, electric, gas, telecommunications, and so where the project was originally a $10 million project when we submitted it as a public infrastructure and some site readiness, it's now a $15 million project, including those private infrastructures as well as a new substation to support the expanded growth of the industrial park. So we are going to be submitting this as a final application probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think I think that we are going to be in a strong position in terms of our proximity to the Micron project. I think that is in our favor, as well as having a site that checks all the boxes and that we've done the work. I mean, that is something that very few sites around the state are going to be able to check all those things and be in the position that we are. So
Have we finalized the design?
the design, from the conceptual design perspective, is where we think it's going to be. Obviously, a project could come in that doesn't fit exactly within that conceptual design, and we have to change things. But I think we have a flexible design that allows us to modify that based on if we're going to do say nine projects of an average size of say 100,000 square foot or something like that, versus maybe you have 3 or 4 bigger projects, maybe one that takes up 100 alone, and then some smaller projects around it.
Yeah, because there was 3 options, and the one
Yeah.
road was going to go around, or
Yeah, I think what we did is we looked at the option where there's a road that goes in and sort of has it looks kind of like a cul-de-sac. It's not really a cul-de-sac, but looking at that option, and then with a sewer option of having a pump station versus a full gravity system, and then just saying, listen, based on however big a company comes, you can shorten that road. You know what I mean? If you get somebody in who needs 100 acres, well then maybe the road is half as long, and they take the end and then you develop in between.
so you don't need to submit drawings.
We're going to submit. Well, we're going to submit, because I think you want to show how far you actually have in terms of and to justify this is what the costs are based on. We're basing it on X amount of feet of road, X amount of feet of water, X amount of feet of sewer, and all these things. So those all add up.
That should look impressive then with the drawings.
Yeah, that and just having a company like CNS, credible company that has looked at this thing and looked at it and really kind of understand the numbers on it, and we have connections and networks related to this to the Micron project and things that are just going to put us in a real strong position. So this will be submitted. My full anticipation, this will be submitted before the next IDA meeting, so we can I can report on that. I don't know if I'll have it. Probably won't have an answer from them yet, but they were pretty quick to get back to us on the pre-application process. Within a week, we knew if the that we were good to go forward to the next round. So
Is it a rolling application, or is it?
it's pretty much rolling until they run out of funds.
Okay.
It's not. There's no deadline. It's sort of go until there's out of funds. And from my understanding, there's about $200 million that the state has put into this. So $200 million isn't going to go very far when you're looking at the whole state.
Especially if we're asking for 10.
We're asking for 10. If you say the average project is that, you're looking at 20 projects across the state. And I imagine there's going to be projects that are going to ask quite a bit more than we are. I think we're being. And I had this conversation with Dave Botar, Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board, that let's not undershoot it, and then to try to be more competitive, let's ask for this, and if they knock us down, they knock us down. But I think you got to make the ask, because we're trying to be aggressive here and trying. This is what's required.
Generous enough?
What's that?
Did you ask for enough?
I believe we did, yeah, yeah. And I'm also in talks with, and I just met with Dave Turner yesterday, talking about how all of it plays together, because we're talking about an industrial park, we're also talking about services to get to the industrial park. And so we're sort of, talking about all this, and there may be some additional asks, maybe not necessarily from this program, but at the state level to try to make all the pieces work. So I think we're all working together on this. I think that, the other option is to also look at the URI that we also had discussed. My conversations with the state is that that's specifically tied to a project. I think that if we're gonna we can apply for it, but if we're gonna be competitive, you kinda wanna tie some sort of an anchor project to it, which, in the coming months, maybe there will be, and then that becomes an option to go that way. But Fast New York, this is specifically set up for this. I wouldn't call it speculative development, but it's the closest thing that we have for a project that doesn't, a site that doesn't have a specific project in mind.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is there, a track for making contacts with Micron spinoff businesses? And what they are planning, and is there, do we talk to Rob Simpson, do we talk to, someone at the Onondaga County?
Yeah, those conversations are already taking place in terms of making sure that we're in touch with the companies that need to be understanding of this. It's not specific to this program. I mean, that's being able to show that. I think it makes it stronger.
Sure, but you've got an in with letting people know that we have this land.
Yes.
This is here, it's
Yes.
available. These are the players that need to know about it and
Yeah.
what they're learning about it.
And there's been meetings at the regional level and with Onondaga County at the table to make them aware of what there is, and this is part of that, of making sure that we have our ducks in a row. Like, it's one thing to market a piece of dirt, we need to make sure that piece of dirt has everything that company
Sure,
needs.
sure.
And so we're sort of, this is a critical part of being able to tell that story.
And just to add what Nick was talking about, I've gotten some calls from developers and construction managers that I worked with back when I was with the Carpenters, and referred them to, I told them to call Austin. And I don't know if he's received calls from him yet, but the word is out. They know exactly how much property we have there, and they actually offered to buy it, which I said, no, we're looking to develop it, not buy it, and not sell it. So
Yeah. We want to have the best and the highest use of this part.
kudos to the team we put together to purchase this property, because I shudder to think what it's worth now.
Oh my gosh, I know,
Yeah.
that's a big time.
So
If I was the previous owner, I'd be, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if people saw it, but like in late December, we had been contacted by reporters at the Pelican, and we had a specific article related to this. They wanted to highlight this purchase that had happened, and that those were questions that had happened. What if the idea hadn't bought it then, what would we be looking at now? And so we're in the game because we have it, and I think a lot of places are kind of scrambling now to try to catch up to us, and it's gonna cost them a lot more money to catch up to us than we're looking at. So, good job.
And time.
Yes.
How about the next site? Are we looking down the road? I mean, this is great, we're
Yeah.
set, we're ready, but.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
What's the next?
I won't talk about it here in a sort of public session, but yeah, those are conversations that are being had as well. Yep. Don't want to give anyone a negotiating leg up on us.
As long as you're working on it.
Yes. Yeah, couple in mind.
any other comments, questions? Okay, thanks, Austin. Number 9, the Nestle site property, EPA brownfield assessment, and the site assessment agreement.
I'll give a little bit of background on this, and then Kevin, if you wanted to jump in just about the, what we're being asked to sign here. So we're working together with county planning and the city of Fulton to, the county planning has secured an EPA brownfield assessment grant of $500,000 to do assessments across Oswego County. Due to the priority and strategic nature of the former Nestle site in the city of Fulton, that is, and the ownership being the city of Fulton and County of Oswego IDA, it was sort of determined to be the first no-brainer site to do these studies. So we are looking to work with county planning. They've hired CNS to do. I think CNS kind of won the contract to do that, to do the brownfield assessment grants, which is good because they have a pretty good understanding already of the environmental situation on that site. So I think they'll be able to do a good job and turn it around quickly. But we are being asked for the land owned by the IDA to sign a site access agreement allowing agents of the county, which would be CNS, to go on and do the phase 1 and potential phase 2 environmental studies that would be required. And so, because we're doing this in collaboration with the city, it's not just going to be our 3-acre site, it's going to be everything that surrounds it, and pretty much going over that entire site out there to determine if there are environmental issues, and if there are, what are they and to what level, and which is important because there are several developers that are looking at the overall Nestle site, not specifically ours, but the land that is owned by the city of Fulton to redevelop it. And if there are environmental issues, one, it's an environmental issue, but it also creates an opportunity because this allows them to tie into the EPA, the brownfield tax credit program. So to be able to tie into that, you've got to show that there actually is something to be cleaned up, and then there's funding available to do that. So it's not necessarily helpful to the IDA from the perspective that we're not going to be able to use tax credits, but I think being able to have these studies done, that'll let us know what the conditions are on the ground. And then, we are still looking at moving our site. I think that this is something that, we wanted to make absolutely sure there's no issues on site that we're moving on to, and that we're moving from. For the city to understand that too. So I think it's a good project we're working on together. I think this is sort of the last step from us before we do go forward and make that swap that we've been talking about. And I think that it's going to lead to some opportunities for private development on areas that are not the IDA property. But listen, if we can have this done and we're not having to pay for it out of our pocket, that's a great thing to do. And it's a good way that we're collaborating with both Oswego County and the city.
Do we know what type of development is being proposed for the other areas?
There is, we've been in discussions with different projects. I mean, the city has plans for, they sort of have their master plan or idea what they envision of what they want to see the entire site. I think it's, the city is looking at a mixture of some commercial development as well as residential development. I think that with the announcement of Micron, they're kind of changing their vision is sort of evolving in that there may be a need as being sort of a bedroom community just outside of this Micron area, that there's going to be a significant need for more housing. So I think that there is a
shift away from low income housing into the market rate?
I couldn't say for sure, but I think that there is probably going to be a market shift in terms of what the site could support and what the city could support based on just the growth of the area, the types of jobs that are going to be created and things that are going to be happening. I think that's definitely being considered now, whereas before maybe the market condition wouldn't have supported that. I think that's still being answered now, but I think that is it's not our site. We don't own that portion of it, but I think that is being looked at now as
the way they're looking.
I think so, yeah, and that's not there's a lot of property at the Nestle site. There's the demolished properties that are owned by the city. There's the property that's the old building 30 that's owned by CDM. And then there's our site. So there's sort of different areas within that. So I don't want to paint with this very broad brush of everything that's looking that way, but I do think that there is a renewed push to see some market rate housing being developed at the Nestle site.
From my perspective, this would be even closer to being ready to be developed for our site, particularly as far as a home for a Micron spinoff. So, this is gonna be the next step along the way towards getting us to the point where we can actually put a shovel in the ground and move this building forward.
Yes.
Do we still have funding in place? To, even though we scaled it back, we still got that funding is in place?
Yes, the IDA never unallocated the funds that were allocated to this project, so there's two different, and this is not related to this, but, you know, there's a couple different models that Kevin and I have looked at in terms of, you know, we do the full project at the scope that was originally identified, just at the higher cost, and, you know, looking at financing the difference, or we look at scaling back the size of the project to fit the original funding model. You know, and then also doing some financing to fill gaps, or at least, you know, until funding comes through. But it's still very much in play, and I would say even more than before, because there is that potential of trying to creating a site that is attractive to to that supply chain, or even just the renewed interest of the area for advanced manufacturing. We're going to see stuff come that is not related to Micron, but they're going to say, well, if Micron decided that Central New York was a good place to go, we should look at it too. I mean, there's going to be growth that is going to be directly related, and there's going to be growth that's going to be indirectly related, and we have to be ready for both.
So the city of Fulton is on board with our project, and
There's never been a change in terms of their interest in our project. It's just in terms of the location of it on that overall site.
So the only,
Which in a way is an advantage moving it, because then we'd be able to
Sure.
use that access road.
Yeah.
And not access road, but the road.
The Birch Street, yeah, that's the plan right now, and they're looking at is taking Birch Street and off of 481 and having that be the primary access internally to the which is good for us, because then you don't have trucks going on to Fay Street and South 7th Street. You keep it 481 right into there, and it just creates better access and visibility for what we do.
plan would be to put a light there over the event.
I think that's the thought. It's a New York State DOT sort of thing. They would have to approve that, but I think that is the
makes sense.
It's hard enough to get through there now.
Yeah, I know.
Turn into McDonald's.
Yeah. I think that's sort of you know.
Yeah, really be hungry when I stop at that one.
That's a necessity for that, but that's still something that has to be approved by DOT. But
I didn't want to jump in.
No, that's quite all right, good discussion. My part of this is that the county's prepared a license, an agreement, which is just for access to the site, for the purpose of conducting these environmental studies. It's a phase one, as Austin pointed out. Usually if a phase one triggers some indication of environmental issues, then they do a phase two, which is typically, they do test borings and they sample it, and then you determine whether there's a need to mitigate any environmental impacts on the site. So this is literally the physical environmental condition of the property, and any project of a commercial or industrial nature that's getting financing is going to have to produce this to a lender. So this is all standard. We're just, again, getting a jump on all of this and getting our ducks in a row. I've reviewed the agreement. It's a very simple agreement. It protects the agency. There's appropriate indemnification clauses on it, so I'd certainly recommend adopting it, and I do believe that we should. It's an agreement, and so this board should act on it. It's the second bullet point.
So can I make, oh, I'm sorry.
No, just because the county is funding it?
Yeah, through a grant that we applied for, yes.
from EPA, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a cool one too, because this is one of the first ones in the city of Oswego, the city of Fulton have the brownfield opportunity areas. Most of the rest of the county does not. So this is the first grant that we've received that allows us to go into other areas of the county. And actually I want to give credit to, I believe it's CNS and our county planning, but they sent letters to all the leaders across the county saying, this program's out there, give us some interest. So this could be even used for a place out in, Walmart, that used to be a gas station. I mean, it's that kind of a project. So we're really hoping to see more development come out of it. Works perfect for this one, but it's a cool opportunity.
And there's sort of a steering committee that I sit on, and it was sort of to, hey, if there's other sites that we're aware of outside of Oswego and Fulton, in Pulaski or Phoenix or other places, to let them know, and then they would reach out. And so I think it's good the way that they've done this, and to make it a program that is more, it's more accessible and available than just a city of Oswego and city of Fulton program.
So this is open to any municipality in Oswego County?
And it doesn't necessarily be a municipality, it could be a private.
Yeah.
private
It's
property.
open to any property that has strategic importance and redevelopment potential. It's not for sites that, you know, are never gonna be redeveloped, probably, but it's gonna be for because really it's to try to determine eligibility for brownfield tax credits. Like you're trying to identify what the environmental situation is, but for the carrot for the developer is to get the project eligible for credits that will help to not just pay for the cleanup, but also help to subsidize a portion of the development cost.
We are where we need to be as far as Columbia Mills is concerned, and that's already all been done there, right?
That was a future, or not future, that was a previous Superfund site. There may be some potential areas that could use some additional cleanup, that are currently just vacant property there. I think it's worth looking at. And I just wanna make it clear that for us, the value is to have these studies done and that are not at our cost, and having that, and then, you know, utilizing that as a marketing tool or marketing asset to then go to companies who would be interested in redeveloping it and getting brownfield credits. Now, the one thing about the city of Fulton and the city of Oswego are both in the brownfield opportunity area. They're the only ones in the county, so they have what's access to an enhanced brownfield tax credit, but there's still tax credits available countywide for projects. So we wouldn't be able to use the tax credit ourselves, but we could use that as a tool to attract a company who would want to use that program and has experience using that program.
So can I make a motion then to authorize the signature of that contract? Is that?
Kevin, the motion should be to authorize the IDA to enter into an agreement with County of Oswego planning to.
Exactly, yeah,
You say you already have
to
it.
approve the agreement and authorize the execution thereof.
Okay, I make that motion.
Okay, Tim? Okay, we got a motion by Tim Stahl, we have a second by Len Schick. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, at this time, we have a few items we need to discuss in executive session. Kevin, can you explain the reasons for going into executive session, please?
Pursuant to the Public Officers Law 105, it's to review the financial history of a particular corporation or individual.
Okay, so can I get a motion to enter into executive session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by Tricia Peter Clark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
10:03.
What time?
10:03.
There they are.
All set, Ken?
Yes, all set.
Okay, coming out of executive session, can I get a motion and a second to come out of executive
I'll
session,
move it.
please?
Second.
Motion by Len Schick, seconded by Mark Greco. At what time? What time?
12:07.
12:07. Okay, we have a few agenda items we need to take action on that were discussed under executive session. The first one was Marmon Enterprises, a loan deferment request. Can I get a
I'll second.
motion by Nick Canale, seconded by Tim Stahl? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next one is the B&T Sports Shop IRP loan request. Can I get a motion and a second? Motion by Len Schick,
I'll
do I have a
second.
second? Nick Canale.
That was Mark.
I second.
Voted.
Oh, Mark,
Mark
okay, I'm
second.
sorry, Mark. Greco, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The pilot EDF report of December 31st, 2020.
It's amended.
The motion reported as amended.
That's fine.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Okay,
second.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Tim Stahl, seconded by Mark Greco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And the delinquent loan report, of December 31st, 2022. Do I have a motion to accept the delinquent loan report as amended?
So moved.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by
Second.
Barry Trimble. All those in favor?
Aye.
Delinquent loan report is carried. Oh, the Columbia Mills site, the authorization to sell, 0.42 acres. Do I have a motion on that, please?
I'll make it.
Motion by Nick Canale, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Len Schick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried. And 15, County of Oswego IDA Administrative Services. The first agenda item, the Administrative Services Renewal Contract is gonna be tabled.
Motion table.
Huh?
Motion to table.
Motion table, okay, good.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Motion by Len Schick, seconded by Tim Stahl to table that, item. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried. And the request for the 2022 Executive Succession Cost Sharing Plan, can I get a motion to accept that?
I'll make it.
Motion by Nick Canale, do I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Barry Trimble. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried. And I think that covers it. Okay, thank you. Any other business
Next.
to bring before the board?
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
Okay, next meeting.
Do we have anything of time sensitive nature that you can think of, Kevin or Austin?
We have a multitude of projects that will be, public hearings, deviation letters, including 3 today, plus TDJ properties down at the village site, so we'll need some time for public hearings, so not early February, that's for sure.
Well, my thought
Yeah.
was 220 is the planning board meeting. Are we anticipating that a resolution coming through after that?
Yeah, we would know.
But we don't need to wait for that planning board meeting to approve the project, we have secret,
Right.
the NAGDAC,
Yeah.
if the board is comfortable with that, we don't need to.
We would just require that before it closes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which would, of
Sounds
course,
good.
naturally happen, but we would ensure it
Yeah,
would.
I mean, we could look at that week though, that same week, the 20th to the 24th, just to kind of give us the same sort of 4-week window we have right now.
Monday's President's Day, right?
Mhm.
Other than that, I'm wide open.
So that's break week.
Yeah, it is.
And I'll be here.
Yeah, I'll be in out of town for work Monday and Tuesday that week.
How about Thursday then? 23rd?
Thursday the 23rd works for me.
Sure. Okay.
9 o'clock?
Is that good for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, on Monday, Wednesday.
Or some business outreach, but we can move it.
Thursday, February 23rd, 9 o'clock meeting?
Perfect.
June 23, 9 AM. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's, just for the record, there's a OOC business outreach meeting that's tentatively scheduled that day, but we can move that.
We may be, well, not business for this board, but we may be deferring that until the new place starts maybe or something
Yeah.
too, potentially, yeah.
Yep.
To be determined, yeah.
Okay, any other business come before the board? If not, I guess I'll entertain a Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion
I'll
by Mark
second
Greco, second by Nick Canali. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Yep, we'll shut this off here first.
Good meeting,
Yeah.
would have never known